This is now issues and updates. First, scattered site legislative concept follow-up. This is a recap from a previous discussion you held. Tonya Holowetsky, Interim Director of Public and Government Affairs, will present. Go ahead, Tonya.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. On October 22nd, PGA came before you at issues, asking for your direction on whether to participate in a legislative concept proposed by Dev Northwest. At that meeting, you had questions you needed answered before making a determination. So we provided the answers to those questions, and they are in our memo, or attached to our memo that's in your packet. So I'm back today in front of you with our original request. Our recommendation remains the same for the BCC to support the effort to advance this legislative concept submitted by Dev Northwest. It will establish seed funding for Dev Northwest and other community land trusts to acquire homes into trust programs. Your approval allows the county to work with Dev Northwest on the bill language ahead of session to help align it with the Housing Authority's goals to sell its scattered sites. So I'm here before you to hear from you on whether you propose we move forward or not.
Thank you for bringing back our questions to this. You have the answer to my question, number 7, listed on here. Once they sell their ownership in this, there's no requirement for them to reinvest in a like investment. So that reminds me that this is a wealth builder, not a home builder. And I do have a little problem with that, but I didn't develop the program. I do have an issue with that. Because in essence, what we're doing is we're giving up our properties used for people who are desperately in need of homes, and eventually somebody can take the money and use it for whatever they want, and I don't like that. So I'm probably going to abstain from this today.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions?
I want to better understand your point. So can someone speak to that?
Let me see.
I just want
My
to
point?
Well, well, the point about the land or the investment could go elsewhere. My understanding that the land trust was typically a 99-year or more contract, right?
Correct.
So is there an option here that's not that?
No, Paul, what it is when they sell it at a profit, they're able to take, the homeowner takes their equity out of it, okay? But the equity that's taken out of it is not reinvested for a home, although statistically they say 70% of the buyers it goes to. But in essence, 30% of the owners can take that money and use it for whatever they want, correct?
So yeah, two things happen, is my understanding of the program here, is the property and the home stay within the affordability program. The person's wealth that they gain and the profit that they make from the accrual of value of the home stays with the individual. They can move on to put a down payment on a new home. Sorry, Trent Wilson, Public and Government Affairs. Put a down payment on a new home, or use it however they see fit, just like any person who sells their property would. So that is their decision, because it's the valuation of their home that they have sold.
And
Okay,
to my
so-
point, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so for clarification, let's say that someone resides in the home, their family resides in the home, they sell it 20 years later.
Yes.
They have a little bit of a profit.
Yep.
They take that profit, they're off, okay? That's the wealth, they accomplish the wealth.
Correct.
Goal, personal wealth goal. With regard to the property, does property still stays in the land trust?
Correct.
It's still going to be a low cost, but it'll be at a higher amount based on the market. Because
Market value.
that reflected the wealth, right?
Correct. And so whatever is gained above the purchase price in terms of property valuation, the word's escaping me right now, that money is split between the owner who's selling and the landowner who is the CLT. The money that goes back to the CLT in that split goes back to the house to buy the house price back down so it stays affordable to the next purchaser. So the house and the property, again, still stay in that affordability program.
Okay.
But
All right,
that
so-
wasn't my objection, Paul.
Right.
Maybe you misunderstood.
So maybe you could just clarify your
Well,
concern.
this is a wealth-building program. This is not a home finance program. For instance, the person that comes in, and let's say they sell their portion of it, which is an accrued appreciation over time. Let's say they come in, they invest, and their share of it's $20,000, just for that. There is no requirement that they take that $20,000 and buy another home. They can buy a cruise, they can buy a car, they can pay somebody's whatever. So it's a wealth-building program, not a home ownership building program, and that is my objection to this, because where the money came from, it came from taxpayers. Taxpayers supplemented people and supplemented our scattered sites. We have a lot of them, and so what we're doing is we're not making sure that that same pot of original investment stays in home ownership. It builds wealth, not home ownership, and that's my objection today and reason why I'm going to abstain.
Yeah, we can't guarantee how the homeowner uses the money, but again, in the response that we provided, based on national surveys, it looks like more than 70% of folks who enter this program do go back and continue to purchase homes. But
Should be 100%.
But no guarantee.
Should be 100%, just in my opinion. Shoal?
Okay, so if we go with this Dev Northwest program, and somebody is buying a home, and it comes time to sell it, who's going to be responsible for the maintenance while they live there? In other words, if the Jones family fails to maintain their house to some standard and sells it, takes their portion of the money, is Dev Northwest left with having to do expensive repairs, perhaps, to get it ready for the next purchaser? How does that work?
It's a good question. I think what I would first say, based on the answers here, is that not us, not the county, we are off the hook on that, right? And so, just like any home purchase, though, that the seller is responsible for taking care of their home, and if they
Okay.
don't, the home stays within or upside of that value.
Okay, but if we don't go with this Dev Northwest plan, and we keep the scattered sites in our housing repertoire, people live there, and when it's time for them to move on, they move on with no wealth building. They're just moving out. They have no wealth built.
Correct.
But the county is responsible for the maintenance on the house for the 20 years they live there. So we end up with the same inventory, whether we stay with our current status quo or go with the Dev Northwest plan. We still have the same inventory, number of homes, and the same number of families housed, right?
Correct.
Okay, so, but with the Dev Northwest plan, people can at least move away with something.
Correct.
Okay, with something in their pocket. Okay, so the other question is on maintenance. Okay,
can come
We
back.
actually have someone here from
Just a
Housing
moment.
Authority.
Just a
Yeah.
moment, just a moment.
come back to me on this one.
I'll come back to you. Gary, you had your light
Thank
on.
you. So this, as you know, Commissioners, this is a proposed bill for the state legislative session. It's a pilot project. I'm sensing a lot of concern. This is the second time you've discussed this. You could just say no. We don't have to be a part of this. So just your
So-
decision. And there's staff in the room to answer your questions when you're ready
Okay,
to.
I like the general idea. It is, I think, not fair to taxpayers who, over the years, who have supported these scattered sites, that some people can just eventually sell it, take some profits, and not use it for the intended purpose, that they can take it, literally go on a cruise. I'm not interested in funding people's entertainment. I am interested in people having affordable homes they can raise their families in. And I wholeheartedly disagree with the allowance to number 7. That's why. Commissioner Savas.
Okay, two things come to mind, but first of all, I just want to just speak a little bit about, and this is going to be part of my final point here. Commissioner Scholl raised the concern about, let's say you don't take care of the property, and, well, my guess is that that would be reflected in the market price, right? If you didn't take care of it and ran it down, then the market price for that is going to be diminished, right?
Yeah, why
And-
don't we, come on
Yeah,
up.
and then, so with that said, that the same token is, if we kept it in our inventory as our scattered site model, we're on the hook for all the maintenance cost, whether it's taken care of or not, right? Because that is one of our handicaps or expenses, right? Is one of the cost burdens of owning all these properties is that we're constantly being bogged down by the maintenance and so forth that we're responsible for. But in the other model, that's really the land trust who's going to be responsible. So we're off that hook, and you still have a product that is still in the affordable market realm. So my question is, factoring all that in, has anyone done the math to say, geez, if we kept this property, we kept these scattered site properties, we averaged the cost of maintaining them over all these years, and that handling cost, what does that look like for if there is or is not really an affordable mechanism to it all versus turning them all over to the land trust model? Or thirdly, what does that compare financially if we were to sell them all, take all that money, and continue building our low affordable housing inventory?
Right.
So have we done the cost comparison of those models? My guess is, if I recall, we did, and investing in the affordable housing model in its entirety was probably the smartest move, if I recall right. However, if the land trust model is a way to help people gain wealth, then I guess that's more of a policy decision. Does that wrap it up?
Well, there's kind of three things that we're creating here, right? So we're preserving the affordability of the existing unit through the land trust. The housing authority is getting the proceeds from a fair market sale, which we can use we're restricted by HUD to use those proceeds for affordable housing, and we get a one-for-one housing choice voucher. So, that is kind of the outcome of these sales. And then, as you mentioned, Chair Smith, the proceeds, there's an equity sharing model, but these folks are also paying towards their mortgage, right? So they're paying off their loan. And so they should be, in my mind, recouped when they sell the property.
But they're able, you're missing my point. You're totally missing my point.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in here.
This is a government subsidy that allows them to be able to purchase a home that they normally wouldn't be able to. They will make money on that. And it's building their personal wealth, not guaranteeing that they will be able to go out and buy maybe a bigger home for their needs, where their personal income is increased because they got a better job or education. My issue is, again, that they can sell and make a profit and take the equity and use it for whatever they want, hence building wealth. I am not against building wealth. I'm against government building wealth for people to do whatever they want with it. That's why I don't like this program. I would go for this program if this was changed, if number 7 was totally changed. I'd do it in the New York Minute. Okay, even what Paul said, develop some type of other program with the land trust in it. I don't mind that. I just don't like number 7.
I see, okay.
Commissioner Schrader.
So is there any information at all about how many people, as I said, what percentage of people actually use this program and go on to purchase another home?
Mic on?
Mic on. Yeah, it says right here, Martha. It says
Where
right,
is it? Where is that?
number 7
7?
on page 4. It says 70% of them do that. So 30% do not, for whatever reason.
Right, but they may be using it for sending a child to college. They may be, in other words, with this building of wealth, when we look at it from a prosperity perspective, it's not only just moving up the ladder to have a house, it's also an opportunity to get an education. It's an opportunity to, I guess I'm just going to say I just don't share your issue with this.
That's fine.
So it's okay. But I've seen it work, and it's a good model, and it's used across the country, and it's been very successful.
The land banking model is a good model.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's possible for us to get a different type of program. I mean, I know, whatever. Commissioner Scholl.
So I agree with Chair Smith in that this whole thing is about housing. Okay. The program that enables somebody to build wealth is a good thing. What about when they sell, their portion of the profits goes into escrow and is held until such time that they're ready to buy their next house, thereby ensuring that all this effort goes towards sustainable housing for people. What about that? I mean, that seems like that would be relatively easy to do, and the end result would be that your entire process here is always geared to housing. Just something to think
Yeah,
about.
I don't know if that doesn't sound like it's the land trust model currently. I don't know if that's something that they could implement. We can surely inquire.
Okay, well, thank you.
Do you understand what my objection is?
Yes.
Okay, does it make sense
Yes.
to you?
Do we have numbers that support that? I mean, I'm just doing some other math here. If you look at the 70% go on to purchase other homes, so 30% stay where they are. Is that how I should look at the other part of the
Well, I
equation?
think it's 30% use the proceeds from the sale for something other than buying another home.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Thank you for the
That's how I read it.
clarification.
That's what it is. I mean, I know that we probably can't say forever on their second or third or fifth house. I get that. But they're able to move up the economic ladder because of this taxpayer-funded low-income housing program. Gary?
I'm not hearing support for this program, so I suggest you just decline and move on.
Okay, all right. And I'm open-minded to something else.
Okay.
Commissioner West?
I don't necessarily have a problem with it. I think I do understand your concerns, Chair. I think those are valid. I think I kind of fall where Commissioner Schrader's falling on this. There has been, this isn't all that new of an idea, and it has had some success in helping people purchase homes. I don't know where the board is at all. You're right, there's a little confusing where we may not be in unison. I think for the record, I kind of am in the same sentiment as Commissioner Schrader.
Maybe we'll have another opportunity soon to do this. And how many sites again are we talking about? I forget, 74?
70, yeah.
70, okay. That's a lot of money. I mean, yeah. Commissioner Sappas?
So is there any data that informs us of what the 30% goes towards?
I bet we could find that out. I don't have that currently, but it's something that I could look into.
Okay, so for example, if you're not going to buy a home, but let's say you're at that age in which you're going to move into a retirement home, you're not buying a retirement home, it's a different model. I wonder if that falls into 30% versus the 70% in a
But
scenario
you know,
like
Paul,
that.
that is actually, living in a home. You don't own it, but you are, if you're in retirement, you need assisted living.
Well, I have a family member that's in actually two family members in assisted living, okay? It's expensive. They're using the wealth from their home, from their property sales to.
That is fine, that's part of,
But they don't own anything, right? It's I won't say monthly, but, it is essentially, it's if they're in hospice, it is monthly, but.
And, yeah, I mean, this data that we receive from them is 70% go on to purchase market rate homes. That's the data we have here. We can dig into it a little bit more and come back if that's your direction.
would you please?
Okay.
Overall, I just want to echo what Commissioner West said. Overall, I'm kind of in favor of it, but if someone's gaming the system, then I think we want to know that,
That's what I'm concerned about.
right?
Okay.
But I want to see evidence that says that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am with it. If you think that, then where's that happening?
Commissioner West?
I guess is that really a risk? I don't know how many people are gaming first-time home buying systems, 70% of them going on to buying homes. I guess I also kind of hear Gary, like either we're going to move forward and support or not support it. How much more are we going to talk about this? We've talked about this more than once already. This isn't new. I'm fine with supporting it. Like, I think overall it's going to be a plus benefit to the community, so it's not that controversial. I'm okay with it. I don't know. Do we need to vote today, Gary? Are we
Someone
moving
wants to make a
forward?
motion, see where it goes. We need a motion, yes.
Commissioner Schull?
I have one more question. Should we go with this program? Sell those 72 scattered, 74? What will be the impact on FTEs by doing that? Do we save money there?
I'm not sure.
I'm always looking at how we save money in a deal. So if we sell the houses, bring the money back into the housing authority in this process because we need fewer FTEs to manage the current scattered site program we have? And if so, how many and what will be the savings? Thank you.
Well, we're converting the public housing program into the Section 8 voucher program. So I don't know what that means in terms of
Okay.
FTE. We can try to get some numbers. But it,
Thank you.
yeah,
Good enough.
okay.
Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I would say another element of this wealth building is that people who would normally need other services because of their financial positions are taken off that public assistance. So in the end, the whole notion is to build wealth so you can reduce the cost of that tension on the public assistance that may be required for life if people can't actually build some wealth, get a property, and then move up a ladder of prosperity. They're not going to be using food stamps, then they're not going to be, I mean, there's a savings there.
There's an assumption, I just wanted data. It doesn't look like I'm going to get it. We're going to take a shot in the dark here and hope people, do what we think they should do. That's what I am objecting to. Commissioner West?
Chair, I would like, would you be willing to entertain a motion on this?
But you can do whatever you want.
I'm gonna just see if we
no.
can move the ball forward on this one. I'm gonna move for the recommendation, I move that PGA recommends that the BCC support the efforts to advance this legislation concept submitted by Dev Northwest. That is my motion.
I will second that.
Commissioner West has made a motion to approve the Scattered Sites Pilot Project Legislative Concept for 2025, and Commissioner Schrader has seconded the motion. Any further discussion?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, just the one. I'm a little bit more comfortable after hearing staff share that, number one, we're going to sell it at a market rate price and gain a voucher, right? And it's going to be locked in relatively perpetuity as an affordable unit in a land trust model. So that puts me over the edge as a positive. So I'll support it.
Yeah, that was the same for me. I think overall it's a plus benefit, and it's a little bit wonky, but that's okay. So yeah, I'll be voting in support of my own motion.
But I would like the data on that, the deeper data on that 30%.
Yeah, we'll try to get that.
Any other comments? Would the clerk please take the poll?
Commissioner Schull,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Madam Chair.
Abstain. The motion passes 4-1-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Oregon Housing Needs Analysis Draft Comment Letter. There's a draft letter in your packet. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, will present.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a doozy. Okey dokey. Welcome back. I haven't seen you in a while.
I just want to bring a happy topic. That's all I want to do. Good afternoon, Chair Smith and Commissioners. I have the privilege of being here and sharing and requesting that you authorize staff to submit a draft letter of comment regarding the Oregon Housing Needs Analysis. I want to take a second, not a lot of time because I know you guys have had a long day, but Essentially, what has happened is the state legislature has, and the governor have directed basically that additional requirements or housing targets be established for various jurisdictions, okay? And these targets are established through this ONA, Oregon Housing Needs Analysis, methodology. So there's two components to this. There's the methodology, which goes out and establishes how many units an independent think tank, I can't even know who it is, but thinks that each jurisdiction is behind. And that methodology is basically broken out on a 20-year basis by AMI. So basically you have 0 to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100, 100 to 120. And there's units assigning each one of those categories. I'm really glad that we're not Washington County, because Washington County has a total of, I think it's 25,000 units they're expecting to build in that amount of time in the next 20 years. Clackamas County's targets is about 12,000, just so you know. There's been a lot of moving parts regarding this particular topic, and there's been a lot of moving deadlines. I want to make sure the board knows the fact that staff has been diligently looking through the methodology part, and we've already submitted comments and concerns and questions about that. Those were submitted back early October. What we're now providing comments regarding is kind of the implementation part, the rules that are being built around how to implement, and that the state Department of Land Conservation and Development is basically looking to implement regarding how jurisdictions implement these rules. I'm going to just briefly want to run through this letter. It's attachment number 1. Just kind of give you an idea about things that and again, a lot of this stuff's going to sound familiar to you because you've said it on a variety of different things. It's pretty similar, okay? Item number 1, we continue to oppose the accelerating trends of state control over local urban land use. We've experienced middle housing, climate-friendly strategies, and equitable communities, all these various mandates that are coming down without sufficient funding and very tight timelines. That's a common thread of the comments that we've heard from the board. We've echoed that thread as it relates to this particular issue. Item number 2, there is some commingling, okay? And because if you recall, I identified the fact that the ONA methodology identifies by AMI certain housing targets that are there. So there's some commingling going on here between this effort and the discussion around the SHS component, okay? And so essentially, item number 2, the ONA, as currently proposed, requires Metro to create a housing coordination strategy for the region. The strategy should focus only on regional housing coordination and financial and technical support for local jurisdictions. It should not create additional requirements that increase costs for local jurisdictions or decrease local control. And we thought that was important to say. In particular, the strategy should not impose new zoning or housing production mandates. Okay? Again, the discussion we're having to date right now is the fact that these are targets. And these are new to counties. Counties have not been assigned these, urban counties have not been assigned these targets in the past. They've been assigned to cities, but not counties. Now you have ourselves, Washington County, and Multnomah County, that are being assigned these targets. Number 3, the rules currently identify the fact that if you are not keeping pace with your peers, and you think about peers, there's peers in cities, cities of certain size and demographics, et cetera, so they're comparable. Basically, if you don't keep pace with your peers, you may be referred into the Housing Acceleration Program, which is kind of yet to be determined what that means. I can't tell you what that means. I can't look you in the eye and say that they're going to come down and help us do all this stuff and they're going to mandate this or that or whatever. I don't know. But essentially, it requires that we're referred to that production Housing Acceleration Program. And our comment is the fact that we don't have any peers. With counties being new here, we shouldn't be held accountable to that. Essentially, the 4 counties subject to the ONA do not have an assigned peer group. Counties should not be subject to this performance-based criteria referrals. And those are our comments associated with that. Lastly, Apologies. Lastly, the discussion in closing, ONA may be well-intended, but the state must recognize that they're disingenuous without funding some of these mandates to achieve them. We're very specific in that discussion. While each new state mandate does not appear burdensome when discussed and proposed in isolation, the sum of all the mandates and requirements adds both time and costs on existing work. We have emailed you updates. Some of this sounds familiar. Some of this doesn't sound as familiar, especially the discussion on the SHS and the discussion the chair has been having regarding that. Timelines continue to shift on this. In fact, we just found out yesterday, we believe that we will be assigned a target, meaning a methodology target, in January of this next upcoming year. We have also been informed, we think that the implementation of the standards or the requirements or rules are going to be delayed until January of 2026. So there's time to think about this. But having said that, we feel it is important for the board to get on the record, to take a position regarding these particular rules. These items within this particular document do not differ from where this board has leaned into the state on prior issues. I'd appreciate it if you want to have comments, additions. The deadline for this, I believe, is the 14th, so we do have another week. If you'd like us to edit it further, we can bring it back for consideration. But we felt it was important to get it in front of you today so you have some ability to ask some questions, and if you have adjustments, we can revise it and get it back to you. That is about all I've got.
Thank you. I want to point out additionally, Dan, thank you for pointing out on paragraph 2. Also on the same page, which is page 4, the last sentence of the big long paragraph of the first paragraph says, the cost of constructing all of the affordable units targeted for jurisdictions within Clackamas County is over $10 billion. Now, are they going to give us $10 billion?
I have not heard a discussion around that kind of funding.
Have they given us anything?
I have not heard a discussion around that
And
kind
is
of
it their
funding.
intent to give us anything? Also, on page 5, the last paragraph, the second to the last sentence says, it is imperative to consider the rising costs associated with the development of affordable housing. If we are to address the housing crisis, we must look at all of the available solutions that would request the state's assistance in looking at opportunities to lower per unit costs. And you know what we're talking about this because we have an affordable housing complex, apartment building we're going to build. Okay, it starts here. The developer gets in. The developer will do it for X amount of money, but we need to give him some tax credits along the way. Okay, and that rises the cost of the unit. And then you go to the next person down the line, or entity, or whatever you want to call them. By the time we get done with this, we're building a studio apartment for $500,000, all on the public pocketbook. So that sentence is really important, and none of this is addressed. I think I like the letter. You know, we can nitpick it all day, but I think this is a start. I don't have a problem with it. I just want to point out some of these just glaring assumptions in this ONA report. Commissioner Scholl?
Yes, how you doing, Dan?
I'm great. Yourself?
Okay, I'm doing 60-40, 60 on the good side.
Excellent.
Okay, so on the methodology target, do you anticipate that will specify the number and types of housing and the number of units of subsidized housing?
That will stipulate, the methodology they have provided as a draft so far has stipulated a total amount, a target for a total amount, and then it breaks that total amount down into different median incomes.
Okay.
So when you think about it, yes, I mean, if you think, and you are very familiar with AMI and the various programs our partners in H3S have, when you look at that 0 to 30 and 30 to 60 and 60 to 80, a lot of that falls within that scope of their work. And right now, the target is somewhere near, it's about half. It's about 5,000 units
Okay.
in 20 years.
Yeah, okay, so requiring subsidized housing without the funding to go with it could retard the ability of counties to build non-subsidized housing. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
You see, so again, to put in a requirement for subsidized housing without a funding package actually will hurt our ability to attract that development to produce other non-subsidized housing. Does that make sense? I wish it didn't.
Commissioner Savas?
Well, Dan, I see you have mentioned in here the words about substantial new investments in infrastructure. It's been one of my issues with this is that we're not, or they are not, factoring in all the infrastructure or consideration of the infrastructure and the ancillary cost aside from building a home, right? It's just not like building a home. And if there's going to be this peer kind of comparison, and then we go to housing acceleration jail, if you will, for lack of a better term, if one particular jurisdiction is, let's say, rich in infrastructure and has available capacity, and another doesn't, we're set up for being penalized because if we can't serve it, we can't serve it, not because we don't want to, we don't have the resources to do it. So, along with a number of other things where simply the monies that are being appropriated from the state are not going to infrastructure, or barely, marginally, I'll give them credit for that, but substantially solely for the structure. So I kind of wonder some language to address that might be appropriate. That we're not all level playing field. And for another example, if you're in an area where it is relatively flat and you're in a jurisdiction where it's not flat, or there's a lot of natural existing things like floodplains or rivers or creeks or whatnot, those are impediments that add to the cost. So not play on words here, but it's not a level playing field, right? If it's not flat, it's not a level playing field. So I think there needs to be some kind of a thing to kind of, I won't say discredit, but to call into question this peer aspect of it. And I see infrastructures in there in a couple places, but that's one point I'd just like to see kind of amplified.
Yeah, we'd be glad to kind of add some simple language around the fact that, because you talked about tools, it's funding tools also at its core. So different jurisdictions have different opportunities for different funding tools to provide the needed infrastructure. We can add a simple addition to that. We can also talk about the different infrastructure costs associated with the physical environment as well. Yep.
Yeah. And the other one, which is a no-brainer to me, let's just say you're a city and you're in the region and you're built out in your urban, you don't have there's no place else to build, right? You're totally, how does that compare to an area that's not? What are you supposed to do there? I don't know.
All very good. Those are very good questions.
Does this apply to the cities too?
Yes.
Do we know what our cities are doing with this, how they're grappling with this?
Most of them aren't happy.
Yeah, it's mixed emotions. We're coordinating with them closely. We are, but it's funny, you talked about, this is the example you're talking about, you think of one of our partner cities like Gladstone or somebody like that has no ability to expand. And so how do you, I don't even know what their number is on here, but again, how do you create that number? You've got to go vertically, or you've got to get smaller lots. It changes the tenor and focus of the community. And so, yeah, there's a lot of questions out there about how you achieve that target.
Cities must be richer than the county if they're not concerned about this. Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
So I'm understanding there are two layers here. This is the state rule, but Metro, since we're under the umbrella of a regional government, will also have its own sets of rules. So we'd be dealing with both state rules and regional rules from external.
Metro is supposed to be taking the lead in a discussion around a regional housing coordination strategy.
Right.
Yep.
But what I'm asking is, do we have to do our own on top of this? In other words, you've got the state saying you must do this.
Yes.
You've got Metro already down the merry path of doing it. So is it Metro that's responding to the state mandate?
Yes,
Do
but I
have to
believe
do-
we will be.
don't have to do any, in other words, they're just basically saying you have to do what Metro says here, right? Or do we
My
have to
assumption
come
is
up
that
with-
Metro will be developing certain criteria and standards and requirements, and then we will be mandated to incorporate those requirements into whatever strategy we develop.
All right.
That's my assumption. I can't be, I mean, based off the best information I have.
I guess I'm trying to determine, as our own government entity, are we going to have to come up with something too? I mean, is it going to be one layer on another? If we didn't have Metro, would we have to do something with this? I
Yes.
guess? Okay. But we don't, because we do unfortunately have Metro.
No, but I think what's going to happen is you're going to have, we would have to do something no matter what.
Yeah.
But what you're going to have is you have Metro that's overlaying the region. I think they're going to try to build consistency in that across the region.
I see.
And have all
Okay.
of us kind of adopt standards that do that.
Commissioner West?
We talked about housing equity, infrastructure, those things, and so maybe I'm getting at or touching on one of your comments, Commissioner Savas, is when we talk about that, we do absolutely have some disparities around geography in this county. And for fairness sake around housing, if we're going to talk about equity, geographic disparity should probably be addressed and what those issues and needs are. We talk about all kinds of different disparities, or there are all kinds of different disparities, but I think one of the big ones around our housing concern and land availability is those just realities that we have just based on where our borders are and where we're located. I'm not sure if that gets to a little bit of what you're addressing, just about making sure that the investments are appropriate in places like Clackamas County that do have those realities that other places don't, where they have more flat land. But there's a way to maybe help us mitigate those so it's fair.
Yeah, well, if you look at just solely in the three-county model, we are disadvantaged. It's not a secret. I mean, everyone knows this. Developers know this. It's hard to build in Clackamas County, right? Because of all the terrain, the topography, the lack of infrastructure, on and on and on. And yet, Washington County is relatively flat, which is why they have so much success. Portland's pretty well built out, but flat. You know, there's exceptions to both, but we don't have that. So we're already disadvantaged. So we have to speak up.
But if we're going to address the housing concerns in one of the bigger counties, we're going to have to start investing in mitigating those disparities. And it's going to have to happen in Clackamas. Like that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think we start with this letter. Commissioners, is this letter good enough to send, or do you want to try to wordsmith it? It's due by November 14th. What do you want to do?
I'd like to beef it up.
Well, Paul, what do you want in
I
it?
kind of gave Dan some ideas here, so.
Okay? On the infrastructure part.
On the infrastructure and the unfair playing field that we currently have
Right.
based on all the other, like Ben and I were just discussing.
Okay. Commissioners? So can you bring that back next Tuesday at issues?
Yes, your draft is due by the end of today, Dan, because Monday's a holiday.
Sorry. Or we could do it,
Next, you do it before a policy session on Wednesday.
okay, why don't we do that?
We'll make it work.
So it's due when?
So it's not time sensitive, or is
It is
I'll
time
have it to you
sensitive.
Monday.
But
Oh, when it's
it's
a holiday.
not
Yeah, I'll have it to you.
immediate, like if we didn't do it today. If we
I
did
see.
that, we-
The 14th is next week.
Right, yeah.
So,
It'll get in time.
so Commissioners, make sure you check that the language you want is correct, because I don't want to miss the deadline while we continue to change the words around.
I have a question. Does our legal counsel's office review this from a land use standpoint?
I'm not aware that we have seen this, but I actually have a question, if it's okay. Looking at paragraph 3, you talked about housing jail. It says, which allows the state to step in and take over local housing planning if there's non-compliance. So is there a potential that the state could come in, take over planning, and then we've got Metro as well?
It's a really good question.
Okay. So is that a
There's no answer to
conflict-
that.
Is that a conflict that we should highlight in this response? A potential conflict, maybe? We can work with you on that,
I mean,
but I
we
think
can
that-
talk about it, but I mean, the fact is you're asking me questions that I don't have answers to, because we
Well,
don't have
I'm
anything
wondering
regarding it.
if County Council just can submit some language regarding that in the letter. We're not expecting you to know.
That's fine.
Yeah, if you all could partner together. Great.
And you're okay on the infrastructure?
I think they're gonna cover it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners, for that. Thank you, Dan, for coming
All right,
up.
we'll bring this back to you next week. Next item, Commissioner Savas is asked to discuss update on scheduling governance discussion.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Scholl and I, long ago, asked to have this put on the agenda, and I think recently this year, it was recommended that in some conversations that we do the board rules first. We've done that and adopted them, so I would like to use our two-commissioner, if needed, to get something scheduled for a discussion on this, not obviously here today, but just as a discussion to talk about we all think about that and what that looks like, and whether or not we want to proceed and how.
I'm not sure what you're aiming at. We did board rules, and I thought that addressed the governance issue. So I'm not going to bring it forward, Commissioners, regardless of whether you force me or not, until next January, and at that point, you may have a new chair to deal with, and you can talk about governance with the new chair.
Well, I think that really gets to the core of the board rules and the core of the challenge, I think, and that is
What
that-
challenge?
The challenge that we can't exercise the ordinance in which the voters approved.
What ordinance?
And we have the ordinance specifically, in this case, perfect example, where two commissioners want to put something on the agenda over the objection of the chair, and yet that's not going to happen because you're going to push that off until next year.
Well, because
And so it's been 2 years already.
it's within my purview to set the agenda, Commissioner Savas. I don't know, is there two commissioners that want to do it here?
I think the discussion needs to be done. I don't know if right now is a good time to do it, because I got to get to the hospital.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, and he's not quite there yet, but he's almost there, so if it's okay,
Yeah.
because I do
think you
look
should
forward
push
to
it
the
off till
discussion.
January.
Well, that might not be a bad idea. We might be more successful then, but I'm also open to looking at it when we can. I mean, we only have 5 weeks until we go on recess for the Christmas break. So I'm not sure where we're going to get that put in.
And we have a lot of policy that we need to do before that, and we're probably going to be accelerating a few things. And so,
A 1 hour, half an hour, 1 hour discussion is,
I'd like to know specifically what you're talking about. I feel that I'm being blindsided. I don't see anything in writing regarding governance.
Chair,
So
I've
you
been in your-
have to admit, I'm very hesitant to bring it before. If you want a real, it really needs to be codified in language.
Chair, I spoke to you about this several times in your office, and you seem to indicate that having a discussion before putting anything down in writing was a fairer thing than any one commissioner trying to guide or shape anything.
Okay, well,
So it's been 2 years.
I don't remember that. If it has been 2 years,
The board
Paul.
rules explicitly call out now that have been approved, to exercise the ordinance. So I'm looking at staff, both legal counsel and administrator. What part of the rules are we not following?
Are we
Or-
not following
or-
rules?
Or what steps do we need to take when you have two commissioners up here willing to take the next steps?
Is that right, Commissioner Scholl? Am I not following the rules?
Well, I'm not saying we're not following the rules. I'm
You
asking,
just said we're not following the rules.
that's not what I said.
The county code and board rules that you recently adopted say two commissioners can add an item to the agenda over the objection of the chair, but it does not say you can schedule it. It says you add it to the agenda.
It's added
Chair
to the.
schedules items on the agenda, so that's still a missing piece.
That's not my interpretation.
Well, Commissioners, I'm not going to sit here and fight. We're all very tired. We put in a long day. And I think we need to end this discussion. And if you want to put something in writing, frankly, I think this is something that needs to be taken up in January.
I have a question for legal counsel. Jane, when we talked about this during the time in which we were adopting the rules, it was clear to me that putting it on the agenda meant putting it on the agenda, not scheduling. There wasn't any nuance about scheduling, nor did the voters in the measure, in the proceeding language that was adopted by the Board of County Commissioners in 2009, 10, specified that there was some additional way to circumvent that particular ordinance in which two commissioners can put something on the agenda over the agenda of the chair. So now we have a nuance being proposed here by what I just heard the administrator say, where no, is the scheduling is now a new barrier. So do we need to go back to the voters and say, get clarity?
Well, you know that's not probably going to happen before at the end of the year.
Oh, I'm sure of that. I'm sure of that.
And I
But
think your
but
question is
this
rhetorical.
is the governance question. This is the governance problem that I'm trying to bring up. This is a case in point. This answers my question and every other question of if it takes 2 years and we still can't get on the agenda, and now it's being kicked and kicked and kicked.
I don't
That's what's
understand
wrong.
what the governance problem is, because we passed board rules, Commissioner Savas. If you want to write something down specifically in language that you think isn't being done, I will look at it.
I'll just say it right now. I'll say it again. I'll say it differently with different words. We have an ordinance in which that is obviously we cannot exercise because it is being blocked by the chair.
Well, I disagree with that. Commissioners, we're adjourned.